And welcome back to the Madness and Meaning podcast. Kelly, the redhead here. My
Kelly made
hair,
an impulsive decision.
I made an impulsive decision to dye my hair red, and
It looks
it
good.
has been the star of the show. Like my hair has been the main character in my life recently. I can't go anywhere without someone telling me that they love my hair. I'm actually just obsessed with it,
Because you're embracing the natural curls, but it's
which
also
is so fun.
I feel like there's also a part of you that's embracing you inside of it too, and it's an energy that you give off. It's not just your hair. Yeah, I that's
My energy has been mwah, chef's kiss. I was just like bragging to Amanda for like a half hour about how happy I am.
that's a great segue.
Yeah, yeah. We, like always, recently have really been struggling to come up with a topic. We usually, like when we first started this podcast, we would be like months in advance planning our
Well, I
podcast
channeled like
topics.
a list of 1,000 topics,
You did, and they
but
were amazing.
But I think what we've come to realize is that if it doesn't feel like it resonates with what we're currently experiencing, it's hard to talk about it from a
It
very
is.
grounded, anchored place. And so we've been wanting to find topics that feel alive inside of us in the moment. And sometimes the inspiration is there and sometimes it's not. And recently we've been, I think, a little bit struggling to find that spark.
Yeah.
And it's felt really good to just talk about what we're going through rather than trying to dissect human consciousness like in
Right.
detail, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Which we end up doing anyways, but just from the point of view of like in real time dissecting our own consciousness and themes and patterns that we see that might be relevant, I guess, to humanity. Which is fun to do
Yeah.
it that way. And Amanda and I were talking about like kind of the place that we're in right now, how different it feels, like the place that you and I are both in, where like I can see myself in you a lot of like having been where you're at a lot, like a lot in recent years and having a lot of resistance towards being in that place as well. And having landed in this place that feels like a tremendous contrast in just how I'm feeling about myself, about my life, like the things I'm thinking about on a daily basis are so different. The presence of fear and worry is so extremely different to what I'm used to. And I don't even know, like I guess I could dissect what helped me get here and what the journey has been like to land in this place where life just feels so peaceful and filled with joy and filled with like genuine fun. But I don't even know if there is any like formula really to getting here because it just feels like it was time to
It's
experience this.
choice. You
Yeah.
experienced one thing and it got to a point where you decided, I don't want that anymore. And you chose something
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. It was actually a very conscious and active choice. And of course, as these things go, it wasn't like one day I decided and then it's been perfect ever since. Like there was a period of time a few months ago where I like broke down crying to Amanda because I was just so not okay and feeling not okay and judging where I was at. And we did an episode already about like this experience of feeling like you're going through the motions and every day is just a means to an end. Everything that you're doing is just like out of survival mode. You're trying to get through the day. For me, it was very much like everything I'm doing is just I'm trying to get the day over with so that I can go back to sleep, is what it felt like. There were also times in my life revolved around disordered eating and my body image where like I had this really weird relationship with food where it felt like every task that I had throughout the day was just another thing I needed to do before I could eat because eating or food was the only reliable sense of pleasure that I had in my life. And that had a lot of weird things connected to it because not only was it the only source of reliable pleasure in my life, but it was also there was a lot of a fear attached to it of, well, if I do eat, then that means then my body's going to look this way and blah, blah, blah. And all of that just feels, there was a moment a few months ago where it felt like I was slipping back into those patterns after having started to experience freedom from them and actually having days where like I have plans that I look forward to and having moments where I'm really present and feeling a lot of joy and having hobbies and things that don't just feel like I'm doing them to get the day over with or doing them for some reward, but I'm doing them because I'm enjoying them. And that was the first time that I had experienced that. And then I started to slip back into some means of patterned, depressive like ways of operating and thinking about myself and thinking about my life. And it scared me because it was so obvious to me how terrible it was living my life that way, even though it had been normalized for so long. And I think what's different now, maybe where this place I've landed the most recently, is where that doesn't even really scare me anymore. And that's what makes
Can
it feel even more real.
can we you said something that I just want to
Yeah.
zone in on. The normalization of going through the motions of every single day, like you have to get through your to-do list and that this
Yeah.
day is a means to an end for the next day and the next day and the next day, and how you didn't want to normalize that,
Hmm.
but I think we do.
We do. Yeah. And my awareness around it was like years in the making. Because there was the point where it was unconscious. Like I didn't even realize that there was anything else available to me. Maybe there was a sense of comparison where it was like other people seem happy, other people seem to genuinely have hobbies that they like and things that they look forward to. Whereas for me, I would compare myself and think, well, when I make plans with friends, there's kind of like this feeling of I just need to get it over with. And when it comes to thinking about starting a hobby, joining a sport team, working out, whatever, all of those things that are supposed to be enjoyable aspects of my life still just feel like things that I have to get over with. And it felt like there was just something innately wrong with me. Like I was missing a part of my brain that could just like enjoy things and not be doing them as a means to an end. And as my awareness around that expanded, it got more uncomfortable as these things tend to happen. Like the more you know, the more you don't know, that kind of same thing being applied to the more that you see something, the bigger and more potent it feels. And it was all I could see now. All I could see at one point was just that I was self-sabotaging my own joy in a way, where it was like I can see that I'm going through the motions of like trying to live a happier life, trying to do the things that will make my life feel more fulfilling, have more friendships, have more connections. I started making, more friendships and prioritizing that stuff strategically. But even so, even with the strategy in place and going through the motions of someone who is more fulfilled, is more happy, is more present, it wasn't happening. There was a disconnect.
This is a really interesting conversation because I think a lot of people are going to resonate with doing the fun thing, but feeling numb as you're doing it, not being able to
Yes.
fully experience whatever it is that you're supposed to be getting from it: excitement, connection, joy, fulfillment. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that so many of us have a hard time actually experiencing those incredible feelings and emotions when we're supposed to be, because we're taking the time to see our friends and to do the hobbies and do the fun things, and yet we don't feel fully alive inside of
Yes.
us when we're doing them?
There's a few different answers I think could be true for that question. The first one I think is it's just a setting of the nervous system where being in a mode of hypervigilance and being in a mode of like going through the motions, getting things done, survival is what feels normal. It's what feels safe. And so even if you're strategically doing the things that are supposed to relax you, supposed to get your walls down, supposed to let you have fun, the you're on the wrong setting. Like your nervous system hasn't adjusted to the actions that you're taking. And so maybe now you're not doing the strategies that tend to align with an upregulated, unsafe nervous system, which might be planning, working, cleaning, hypervigilant type things. Now you're doing the fun thing. You're reading a book, you're going out to dinner with a friend, but the mode that you're doing it from, the setting that your nervous system is at still says it's not safe to relax. If I relax, bad things are going to happen. I need to get things done. If I don't get things done, blah, blah, like all of these stories that justify that the nervous system needs to stay in that setting that feels comfortable and feels safe, which is kind of similar to where I was going. The second point is that we have fears around relaxing. We have fear around fun. We have fear around connection. We've had many conversations that have alluded to this idea that the thing that we want, we actually fear it more than we want it. It's very true most of the time because the mind attaches fear to what we want, to
Why
what we
would someone
desire.
fear relaxing? Why would someone fear joy, excitement, connection?
Mhm. Well, I would ask someone that question is what do you fear would happen if you had fun? What do you fear would happen if you relaxed? And sometimes the answer is really obvious. And sometimes you really have to like sit and explore it and think like, what could I possibly be afraid of? Because the answer, there might be some common themes to what those answers are going to be. It's like, if I relax, I'm afraid that I'm going to slip up or I'm going to forget something and disappoint someone. Or if I relax, I'm afraid someone's going to take advantage of me. If I relax, I'm afraid that something bad is going to happen. Like those kinds of common patterns and themes to those fears. But I would encourage someone to do their own personalized exploration of that because you're going to get deeper insight into what conditioned you into that fear. Where did you learn that? What is the specific worst case scenario that your mind projects onto fun unconsciously? Usually these things are unconscious. But that's why we need to create the space to explore them consciously.
What's coming through to me as you're talking is the connection between everything spiritual,
Yeah.
intuition, manifestation, like all of it with fun. Literally, fun is the way. And I've been
Yes.
trying to teach students this, where anytime I talk about increasing your intuition, anytime I talk about opening up your channel, I think what's expected is the same structured, I must learn the steps and become good at all of the things. I can do it just like learning any other skill. And it's the complete opposite. When
Yes.
you feel safe inside of when you can be inside of the moment, when you can relax, that is when everything comes to you. That is when your intuition opens. That is when clarity comes. That is when you feel safe taking action towards what you want. That is when all of the serendipitous like connections, friendships come into your life. It's when you let go. It's when you release. It's when you relax and surrender that stuff happens. And I think in order to go from feeling numb, tightly wound, feeling anxious and unable to be in the moment to feeling super relaxed, what's going to come first is facing all of the massive discomfort. It's going to be that contraction. It's going to be
Mhm.
all of coming to the surface and feeling it finally. And so I think that we fear that process. And so we
Yeah.
constantly shut it down. But that keeps us inside of this box of anxiety and numbness. And it's feeling the fear, it's feeling that all of the shame, all of the sad that actually allows you to open up on the other side of that. And that that's not well understood.
Yeah. And I want to hone in on what that process looks like of feeling those fears, feeling that discomfort, because I think that it happens two ways, but tends to happen one way more often.
Yeah.
And for me, that way that tend to happen was that the last few years have been a continuous confrontation with the things that I'm the most afraid of happening, so that I could learn that I'm okay even if they happen. And oh my God, how freeing that has been. Like, I don't think I could ever be in a place where my nervous system feels this relaxed, open, present, where I can have fun if I hadn't faced what my deepest fears were, which were a lot having to do with um, a combination of safety and disconnection, a combination of fear of being judged, rejected, abandoned, lonely, a lot of those things, and having to really confront experiences that cracked open these walls I had built around those experiences, where I had built a whole life around making sure those things never happened. Built a whole life over making sure that I didn't ever have to experience feeling rejected, judged, abandoned, lonely. Am I frozen?
No, you're just on a
Okay.
roll.
Oh, okay, good, good.
Yeah.
Um, I built a whole life around making sure I never had to feel unstable, insecure, unsafe. Um, Things connected to my self-esteem, my self-worth, built a whole life around making sure that I never had to feel unworthy, not good enough, et cetera, et cetera. And it was the life that I had created around avoiding those experiences that was keeping me numb. And I always like to say that when we numb ourselves to one end of the emotional spectrum, we numb the other. And I think that's so true.
Yeah.
Because when I wasn't willing to feel grief, sadness, shame, loneliness, all of these really uncomfortable feelings, when I had created a life around making sure I never had to experience them, I also never experienced joy, fun, connection, excitement. I was numb to all of it. And the process of being okay with those feelings and those experiences that I had deemed as unquestionably uh, terrifying was just having experiences happen to me that were out of my control that forced me to feel them. But I guess I can also give myself a bit of credit to, but when they happened, I saw the opportunity. And I knew that those things were happening so that I could learn what it was like to find my own sense of safety inside of these really confronting experiences so that I could free
What would you
myself.
say what would you say to someone who says, "Well, I do feel those things all the time, but I've never experienced breaking through them. It's the
Hmm.
fun on the other side of it. I feel lonely all the time. I feel
Hmm.
disconnected and anxious all the time. I feel
Hmm.
depressed. So I'm feeling those things, but I've never been able to break
Yeah.
through."
I think most people's idea of feeling those feelings is a mental experience of those feelings, which is that you're thinking lonely thoughts, you're thinking sad thoughts, you're thinking um, anxious thoughts, but there's a barrier between you and the actual raw experience of them. Because you're staying up in your head thinking about them, strategizing them, judging them, making them wrong, trying to come up with a strategy to get yourself out of it, rather than dropping in and welcoming it as a part of your human experience. And for me, there was a lot of different moments where I dropped in and I cracked open. There were moments of going through a really tough breakup and just catching myself falling asleep at night, spiraling over everything that relationship triggered inside of me, rejection, feeling not good enough, feeling jealous, all of this stuff, and noticing that I was in my head about it. And then I would just you see the doorway, see it as an opportunity for me to be like, what is what would it be like just to welcome this? What would it be like to not have to strategize myself outside of this feeling, but just to be jealous, heartbroken, in shame, feeling rejected, feeling not good enough? And usually just that intention itself, the willingness and the commitment to welcoming that, I would tear up. Sometimes I would just let myself start speaking out loud, usually in whisper, because I didn't want to wake anyone up because it'd be in the middle of the night, or whenever it was. But just like saying out loud what this feeling was saying, what it wanted to say, like giving it a voice. It's one of my favorite ways of actually expressing and allowing an emotion to really be felt and to move through rather than staying in the mental resistance to it. So if someone is in a place where they're like, I'm lonely all the time, I'm anxious all the time, I'm feeling it all the time, I haven't had that moment of breakthrough yet, it's because you haven't actually let yourself experience it. It's all in your mind and it's all being blocked by a strategy of overcoming it. And what needs to take
by not
place,
feeling it. Like
right?
you know that if you were to let your walls down, you would really feel it. And it's
That's right.
uncomfortable enough already. So let's just hold it at bay, knowing that I do feel
Yeah.
this thing, but I
Yes.
don't really want to experience it in its entirety.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeping the feeling at arm's length
Right.
where it feels tolerable. But and let's also just give a slight caveat that like there is a window of tolerance and there is
Right.
an intelligence that will tell you what you're ready to feel. And there's definitely room for being supported and having a qualified practitioner to support you in going to those places when those places aren't safe for you to go alone. And you'll know whether they are or not. Either you'll know because you'll just have the intuitive hit, or you'll know because you just won't have the capacity to access them yourself. Usually there's like a block there and you just can't drop.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was gonna say seeking out a professional, a therapist, a coach, um, or somatic practitioner. The
Mhm.
somatic work really cannot be overlooked. It's something that more and more I keep coming back to, where when the body feels safe, stuff flows.
It
It
does.
flows through. And when you're so constricted and tightly wound inside of your nervous system, inside of your physical container, you're not going to want to feel what's there, and you're not going to be able to, because
Mhm.
it's just going to feel stuck and too scary. And learning how
Yes.
to gradually like expand that, open that up, relax that will allow for that release to gradually take place in a
Mhm.
safe and controlled and supportive environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this has been years in the making of somatic work and embodiment work and learning to face the things that I had been avoiding, being forced to um, face the things that I was avoiding at times. But there was still a willingness to face it as well when the opportunity presented itself. And I remember there being times too when I had like first learned about somatic work, was highly aware of the fact that I had a lot of trauma and somatic blocks in my body and wanted to go there. I had every reason in the world to go there. I had the tools to go there and I couldn't. Like it was just not ready. My mind would dart. I couldn't get there. I couldn't access the feeling. I couldn't release it. And I had no choice but to just trust that there was a wisdom to my process. There was a wisdom to the rate at which I was going to open. And as frustrating as that is to hear, that like this can take a long time for your body to feel safe enough to let you go to those places that you need to go in order for you to find this freedom, this joy, this fun on the other side of it. Um, that is part of the journey. and every part of the journey is going to feel a bit better. And I'm currently at a place that feels unreal and, you know, it could be temporary as well. Who knows what my life is going to look like from this point forward, but I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I have accessed more exhilarating joy and peace than I've ever accessed in my entire life. And it's not just like a day, it's like consecutive days and weeks of feeling this for the most part. And I've never experienced this before. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that that was just the next stage of this process for me. It was like I faced deeper edges of my darkness over time, confronted them, breathed through them, expressed myself inside of them. And this was the reward almost. It kind of feels like a reward on the other end of it. I don't know if it's good to think of it that way, but it does make sense in my mind of like the darker you're willing to go safely and with the right support and in the timing that you're available for it, the more light and joy you're going to have access to on the other side of it.
More and more, I come back to the truth of choice, how we really do have the choice for all things. We have the choice of what we think, how we feel, who we surround ourselves with, the the places we go, the things we do, and I I understand that not everyone is dealt the same deck of cards when you're coming into this world. Like, I'm taking that into consideration when I say this, but I'm finding it harder and harder to buy into my own limitations when it comes to not feeling like I have the choice to prioritize fun, to prioritize
Yeah.
enjoyment. And it's just that I'm choosing not to because there's fear inside of doing so. And I think so many of
Yippers.
us have normalized, have normalized that things need to be challenging before they can be fun. Like, we have to deal with the challenges of life first and be supported by our ability to do that before we can let go.
Mm.
And I no longer believe that that's true. We really do come here with complete and total freedom, and we just have to begin to see it that way first.
Yeah. I love this um disproving this idea that joy and fun must be earned. And I think the first step is just acknowledging that a lot of us just operate that way, as if that's true, whether we realize it or not. I think a lot of people don't realize it. I think a lot of people who might get into manifestation in like the spiritual world might start to realize, like, okay, I've been putting conditions on how hard things need to be in order for them to be good. And there
No,
starts to become,
I think people make manifestation another job.
that is true. Manifestation is like the next level of it, but it's still a baby step on the journey.
Yeah, they say I need to manifest this thing so that I can feel the freedom on the other side of it. And so now manifestation is going to be on my to-do list and it's going to be my
That's
job.
right. That's right.
It's just an extension of the
Yeah,
same thing.
it is. It is. It is still work. It's like saying it's easier work. That's kind of how we justify it in our mind. It's like rather than working hard strategically on this thing and exhausting myself physically to get this thing, I can do these other things that still
Yeah,
feel like I'm working towards it, but
right.
it's like in my head. And I'm doing these rituals with the crystals and the sage and the
Yeah, yeah.
and the journal prompts, and it still work. Exactly. But it is like a doorway into what letting things be easier can look like, but it is still a manifestation of the same thing, but just along the journey, I think a little bit more, because there does become a point where for me, I got really tired of manifesting. That started to feel exhausting. It started to feel really heavy to like do the Joe Dispenza meditation for an hour and sit in silence and visualize my goal and then leap into it and then journal. And that started to feel so tiring that I just gave up on all of it and still have a cool life,
Because
still
of
am
the
doing
need
cool things.
attached.
Yeah,
because of the need attached. You can't feel how you want to feel until it comes to fruition. There's
that's
still a
right.
powerlessness inside of that. And I think what we're talking about today is the ability to anchor into your power comes from the realization that it's available to you now. You have the
Mhm.
choice to go out, enjoy yourself now,
Mhm.
but you just have to feel safe inside of doing so first.
Where are you at with this? Ah,
I was trying to be subtle.
I was like, I thought you were pointing to the bed. I was like, is Dan back there?
We
Did
could
I
just
ask
keep
something
this,
inappropriate?
we could just keep this part in. I was trying to signal subtly to Kelly to speak into her mic and she didn't understand what I was saying.
Hello, sultry Kelly is back with her breathy microphone.
What was your
Amanda,
question?
I want to know, where are you at
Oh,
with all of this stuff?
yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit in the middle of a contraction phase. And this is something that I have come to understand and normalized for myself is part of the process of expansion. It kind of contracts and then expands and contracts and expands where you have to kind of feel this experience of like what blanket is the best word I can describe to it, where you're feeling like frustrated with life and then something shifts and it just like opens up and like everything feels good. And that lasts for some time. And then you start to feel that like that creep again of feeling a little bit
Mhm.
frustrated with things. And I feel like I'm in the middle of one of those contraction phases where I'm doing a lot of inspiring creative work, but it's starting to feel like work a little bit. And it's because I'm like have these deadlines that I'm putting on myself to get it done by, and it sort of defeats the purpose of the work itself, which is supposed to be fluid and come from a place of creativity. And I'm being told in this moment
Mhm.
to let that be okay because it's part of my process of learning how to anchor into the energy in the moment, which for me is scary because I'm a control freak. I come from a very type A need to control everything type of past, and stepping into this role as channeler, quote unquote, requires me to be massively uncomfortable. And so it's something I'm learning to navigate. And
Yeah.
to answer your question, yeah, I'm going through a lot of changes and I'm in this kind of unstable place of flux, which is uncomfortable for me. So I think I'm working through a lot of discomfort.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you see this relevant to the idea of how we're numbing our joy by numbing discomfort, ideas around like how to access more joy. Like what are you pursuing? What do you want to experience? What are you learning about yourself in regards to that?
I think for me right now, it's a process of complete surrender because I have found myself gripping again for a semblance of control. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to live, and it has to be somewhere that I really, really like. How I have control over any of that, like I can choose where I live, but I can't control how I'm going to feel on a day-to-day basis and over the next course of the next 10 years. Like I don't have control over that. I'm also getting ready to launch something new and I don't have control over how well it's going to go, how many people are going to show up. I'm also working on like another podcast and launching these episodes. I don't have control over how fast they upload. I don't have control over the internet connection. So there's all of these different things that I'm witnessing myself trying to control and learning how to let go very, very slowly. And and experiencing my discomfort inside of all of that. And I guess to answer your question, witnessing the effect it's having on my nervous system, how tightly wound I am, how exhausted I've been feeling despite not doing a whole lot physically, and learning how to breathe and really coming back to the present moment. I'm in California. It's beautiful here, and reminding myself to be outside and walk my dogs and let go of the thing that I've worked so hard to enjoy that's now starting to feel not as enjoyable.
Wow.
Did
Yeah,
I answer your question at all? I don't feel like I did.
I think you did.
Okay.
I definitely think you did.
I guess
And
what I'm trying to express is that I'm a work in progress. So I'm speaking
yeah,
about something from an intellectual place, but I'm also navigating it from a very embodied place in my own way on my own timeline.
yes, which is my favorite way of approaching these episodes, to be honest. And when it comes to this topic, I feel like because I've unlocked this new like phase of it where it's starting to feel like something I don't struggle with anymore, which is weird because it feels like it happened so suddenly, even though I know it hasn't. It's been such a long process, but it feels like very suddenly the thing that I've been struggling with for so long is no longer my struggle. Where now I feel like I just want to like we were talking about this idea of like making your pain your purpose. That was like another topic idea, but I feel like I'm experiencing that now where it's like I just want to like get up on my pedestal and yell to everyone about how good life can be and how to do it. Based on what I've experienced over the last few years and my learnings from it.
But you got
Um,
here through struggle,
yeah,
so they probably have to do the same.
that's the thing. Yeah. It's like, oh, my purpose is to prevent other people from struggling. Well, that's not good. Like, why would I?
Yeah,
That's not a good thing to give someone necessarily.
yeah. It's so
Yeah.
interesting how there's so many spiritual teachers out there whose role is to help you manifest the things that you want, help you discover your purpose, all in this end goal of helping you feel the sense of freedom, the sense of peace, the sense of whatever, when
Mhm.
we really can't control someone else's journey or experience. And ultimately, most of the time, the struggle is the gift that's going to
That's
lead you
right.
towards the peace and on the other side. And the struggle is part of the purpose.
I love this idea. In addition to that, we can't control other people's experience, is that we shouldn't.
We shouldn't.
We shouldn't. Like that wouldn't be the best case scenario
Well,
if
that's a
we
desire to
could,
control our own experience.
yeah,
Yeah,
control how people see us, control
sure.
so that we can control how we see ourselves.
Hmm. So it's very prevalent inside of the
Yeah,
wellness space.
totally. Totally.
Is
I don't
there
even know where to
anything,
go with this.
is there anything I was gonna wrap this up.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd
Yeah.
like to add to this?
No, I don't think so. How about you?
I don't think so either. I guess I just want to leave people kind of with something to reflect on, which is where in your life do you feel like it's that you've been postponing pleasure, excitement, or unable to fully experience it when you're telling yourself that that's the time you're setting aside and you should be in that
Mhm.
moment. And if
Yeah,
you're noticing that you're unable to fully open up to that and it's feeling a little bit numb, or you're feeling like you don't have the ability to prioritize it in the way that you want to, asking yourself what you fear if you were to choose that
exactly.
and seeing where it takes you.
That is such a powerful exploration. I'm excited for anyone to actually find an answer to that question. Ooh, hello. I'm back. Hello. Should I repeat everything that I said?
No, we heard you. It was just a little
Okay.
quieter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.